My name is Amy, and I'm a passenger on the midnight train. Last time I told you I was scared for my life because of the man with the briefcase. This time, I'll tell you how I almost died. Yeah, I almost died. I guess the almost part is obvious since I'm alive enough to type this update. But let me tell you how that even happened and how I got away with almost dying in a place like this. My day started with a breakfast at the balcony of the Weeping Bride. I still like talking to her, telling her about my day and sharing all my thoughts. She didn't react to my presence anymore, but it didn't matter for me. I also got a call from my mom. She didn't believe me anymore since I'd been sick for quite a while now and refused to let her visit or drive me to the hospital. I still didn't tell her the truth. I told her that I'd gone away for a while, reassured her that I wasn't in any danger, and that I would be back soon. Yes, that was a lie, but what else could I have said? I promised that I'd message her every day so she knew I was fine, and that was that. She's worried, anyways, of course, but it's still better than telling her what was really going on. I stayed with the bride for a while, mostly to avoid the man with the briefcase. Surviving the night gave me a little confidence, but I still felt uneasy, like I had destroyed something between us, shattered it beyond repair. I wasn't sure what it was, but I couldn't shake the feeling. She started to cry harder at some point, and I took that as a sign that she didn't want me around anymore. Although I couldn't be sure about that, of course. I grabbed my stuff, said goodbye to her, and went inside the train again. It was about noon at this point. The first two wagons I crossed were entirely empty, and walking through the eerie silence scared me more than the proximity of the not completely humans that populated this place. I whistled some random tune just to hear something. I looked warily around me just in case something was sneaking up on me. I didn't trust this place at all. Nothing surprised me from behind against my expectations. No, the next horror the train threw at me would approach me head on. I had almost reached my compartment as a few people walked towards me. Now, with most things on the train, you could pretend they were human by overlooking a few little details. That wasn't possible with these people. Their clothes were worn down. I could still recognize them as military uniforms, although a very old variant. They were painfully thin and their skin was discolored, black from frostbite. Their eyes reminded me of dead fish eyes, pale and rigid and empty. They greeted me in unison, and their voices were as cold as their bodies. Hi. Hello. Nice to meet you, I stuttered. I was nervous, even though the rules said that the frozen carps were harmless. Looking at them made me sick. I'd never seen a dead body before, and although they were still walking, they were not alive, and that fact made my whole body grow cold. They sat down in the middle of the hallway, effectively blocking my way in the process. Sit with us for a while, they asked me. I didn't have much of a choice. Antagonizing the inhuman things wasn't something I planned on doing, not even the ones that were apparently benevolent, so I sat next to them. One of them opened his backpack and pulled out some mold covered food. My mind immediately wandered to the rotting plague and how I spent an entire evening coughing and vomiting black mold, and I was hit by a wave of nausea. He offered me some food, but I shook my head. No thanks, I've just eaten. I explained and choked back vomit. I still tasted the mold on my tongue. They shared the food between them, and for the life of me, I couldn't tell how many there were. There weren't too many, but I should have been able to count them without effort, but I think their number changed a lot. You are alive, they then said, still in perfect unison. Yes, I agreed, and you are not? They shook their heads. We were forgotten, stuck in a snowstorm and left behind in the middle of nowhere, until there was nothing left but the cold, until we couldn't move and couldn't breathe and could do nothing but sleep while our skin went blue, then white, then black from the ice. I nodded slightly. A bunch of soldiers left to die in the snow? Just another tragedy for the train to collect. I pitied them. You died in a train, didn't you? I asked quietly. Maybe it was insensitive to ask about their death, but I wanted to prove a theory I had since I learned about compartment 18. Stuck in a train, covered in snow, until the tracks were no more, they agreed. The doors froze shut and the engine ran cold. The windows showed nothing but white. I could basically feel the panic they must have felt, the horror as they realized the doors wouldn't open, the sheer desperation as the food was running out, the rooms were getting colder and colder, and there was nothing they could do about the frost that was claiming their bodies. I shivered. How did you get here? We woke up here, they answered. Now we are here. We will stay here until we end forever. I considered my theory confirmed. The midnight train claimed the souls of those who had died on the train in some horrible way and made them into some sort of entity. Maybe so it could continue to feed off of their tragedies, maybe to get them to spill blood and feed the train that way. Maybe both. What are you doing? I asked the frozen corpse. Do you have a goal? They seemed pretty open about their death and the aftermath, so I considered it safe to ask them. It was a good way to find out more about the train. The lights flickered. Once. Twice. My stomach dropped. The corpse were silent. A third flicker. The corpse said, you should run. They didn't have to tell me that. I hurried to get onto my feet and started running towards the door without looking at the corpse again. The lights continued to flicker on and off and on again, making me dizzy. I ran as fast as I could while the flicker grew faster. The door was already within reach. I basically threw myself against it, grabbed the handle, and tried to pull it open. It didn't move. Panic grabbed me. I pushed and pulled and screamed and punched, but there was nothing I could do. In my desperation, I turned around and ran in the other direction, hoping I would make it to the other door in time. And the lights went out. It was still the middle of the day, and there should be at least a little light from the outside windows. Yet I was lost in pitch black darkness. I couldn't see at all, but I still sprinted forward. I thought I'd be safe if I reached the other door. The wagon wasn't that long, just a few more meters and I'd be fine. My heart was beating so fast it almost hurt. My lungs were stinging, but I didn't slow down. I was almost there. Almost. Something slammed me against the wall. The impact was hard enough to push all of the air out of my lungs. I gasped for breath, too stunned from the sudden attack to even attempt to stand up, as something wrapped around my throat and pulled me up. I tried to loosen the grip around my neck, and my hands grabbed thick, sharp claws that dug into my skin. Something in the darkness was growling. I felt hot breath against my skin. The thing pressed me against the wall, and then suddenly a sharp pain shot through my stomach. I couldn't breathe with the claws around my neck, but that didn't prevent me from screaming in pain, wasting even more oxygen. Without thinking, I put my hands onto my stomach and felt another set of claws buried deep in my body. I felt dizzy. Breathing was almost impossible. The pain deafened every thought I might have had. The thing's breath was close to my shoulder, and I knew I would die. The train had won. It was over, and there was nothing I could do about it. I saw colors dancing before my eyes in the darkness. I wanted to scream, but there was not enough air left in my lungs. Numbness was closing in around my mind. I knew it was over. And then the lights went on. The thing screamed in pain. It let go of me, pulling its claws back and ripping half of my stomach open in the process, and I finally had enough air to scream again. I fell to the floor, pressed my hands onto the wound, and screamed my lungs out. I still couldn't think straight. The lights above almost blinded me, so I squeezed my eyes shut. Put your hands away, a familiar voice said, but I didn't remember who it belonged to. All I knew was that I had to try to stop the bleeding, so I didn't move at all. The person sighed, grabbed my wrist, and pushed them away. An ice-cold liquid was poured over my wounds. It was fine at first, but after just a few seconds, it started to burn. I don't know for how long I screamed. It may have taken several minutes until the pain finally stopped. I opened my eyes just to see my stomach fully healed and the man with the briefcase kneeling beside me and closing said briefcase again. "You saved my life," I whispered. My voice was hoarse after being choked. He nodded. "You were nice to me yesterday. Now I return the favor." I didn't lie. I didn't expect a favor from you. "I know," he replied. "That's why I saved you." I even managed to smile a bit. "Thank you. Thank you so much." "Something like this won't happen again, Amy." He said seriously, stood up, and picked up his briefcase. "I know. Still, thank you." He turned and walked away the exact moment the detective approached. They stopped for a moment, looked at each other, and then nodded briefly. They didn't exchange a single word. The man with the briefcase just walked away while the detective knelt down beside me. "That was a close call, kid," he said. "I feel like shit." My throat still felt too tight. I was dizzy and my head hurt. My stomach was perfectly fine. Whatever the man with the briefcase had done, it had been effective. "At least you're alive." He glanced in the direction the man with the briefcase had disappeared in. "What did you do to make him save you?" "Bought him some chocolate," I answered honestly. He chuckled. "Now that's a deal." He helped me to stand up, and I held on to him while we walked towards my compartment. I knew my wounds must have bled at some point, but the floor where I had lain was perfectly clean. "I guess the train has been fed now." "Why did you ignore your rules, kid?" the detective asked as we reached my compartment. "There's enough time to escape before the dark beast comes." "Hey, I didn't ignore anything. I reached the door, but it was locked." He raised an eyebrow. "You can't lock the doors here," he said. "Someone must have held it shut." His words were a punch in the gut. Although my head was still spinning, I realized what that meant. Someone had tried to kill me. The train wanted my blood, and it was going out of its way to get it. I sent the detective away almost immediately. The train was trying to get me, and now it scared me more than anything. But I was weak after the dark beast attack, so I lay down and slept for a while. I'm not sure what to think. Someone has held the door shut. I feel vulnerable. Not knowing who it was makes it only worse. On the other hand, the man with the briefcase, a known servant of the midnight train, has saved my life. I know he won't do it again, and yet doesn't that mean that the train accepts my life? That my blood is enough? I hope it's satisfied now. Anyways, Lily came to visit after a few hours. She said the detective had told her what had happened. She was worried sick. We talked a lot. I told her everything, and then she kissed me. She spent the night here. I'm actually typing this while she's sleeping next to me. I honestly don't want to go into detail about my personal relationship with Lily, so I guess I'll end the update here. There's a lot I have to think about. Lily and I talked about the person that has shut the door, and we have three theories. The man with the briefcase, who has wanted to feed the train and has saved me in the last minute because my blood has been enough. Or the detective, because we know nothing about him and he could as well just work for the train. Or it was somebody else, someone I had no connection to, maybe even the train itself. I don't want to believe the detective was to blame. I want to trust him, and maybe I'm stupid, but he seems to be the most likely to actually hurt me. So, yeah, that's it for today. I'll update you guys again as soon as something interesting happens, and I fear that day will come way too soon. Until then, do something nice for people once in a while. They might return the favor.